Despite how badly the Trump administration wants Signalgate to go away, it's one of those little stories that will refuse to die. And the reason why is because it has far-reaching implication that goes far beyond just partisan politics. This is not just Democrats screeching about something that doesn't matter. This is multiple horrifying revelations that this administration is doing. The first, the obvious one, is that our own national security advisor, Mike Waltz, is adding people to Signal group chats that he doesn't intend to. Oops. Next problem is no one in this Signal group thought to ask, who is this Jeffrey Goldsmith guy that was just added to our group? He's not a member of the administration. No one thought to ask that question either. Third problem is Pete Hegseth is sharing classified information detailing out strike information before the military operation is conducted. This could have led to the Houthis reorienting their anti-air system and actually taking out fighter pilots out of the sky. This could have led to actual military deaths. Totally preventable, but because Pete Hegseth wants to look cool for his friends, he felt powerful and emboldened to be the strong warfighter that he sees himself at. It's all aesthetics. Like, I haven't fully read his book, but if you read parts of it, it is like, it's obvious this man is all about the appearance of being a competent warfighter without actually having the competence. So that was the third problem. Is our own Secretary of Defense doesn't understand operational security. Which, as an addendum, he did say the funniest thing ever is we're all clear on operational security in that group chat. Accidentally adding a person to a group where you're illegally sharing classified information, it's not operational security. Fourth problem is that no country is going to be willing to risk sharing classified information with the United States because apparently this administration doesn't take it seriously. Because as it's currently going, the administration still is not acknowledging that this is a national security breach. They don't care. They don't have to care. Not yet, at least. But other countries, other intelligence systems, they care. And when the next horrible thing happens in the United States, the next preventable catastrophe happens that could have been prevented if we had that kind of intelligence, we get to point to this administration for being so careless with this kind of information. So, on the front of intelligence sharing, we're on our own. Five Eyes is crippled, if not going to be completely undone, just like NATO going into the future. Let's see, what's a fifth problem? Fifth problem is everybody in this group chat failed to acknowledge the basic reality that they were even in the group chat, like Tulsi Gabbard, for example, under oath, refused to acknowledge that TG, her initials, meant that was actually her in the group chat. She wouldn't answer that question. Mike Waltz could not acknowledge that this was anything more than a mild oopsie. Pete Hegseth immediately blamed the journalist somehow, casting aspersions on his character, claiming that he just spreads fake news and yada yada yada. All the more reason to ask, then why are you adding him to group chats that he doesn't belong to? Why are you sharing this information with somebody who doesn't belong? These excuses are just as shallow as the people that are giving them. These are just political creatures that care far more about their political future and their careers than they do about the United States. They are just as transactional, just as fake, just as incompetent as the person that appointed them. Sixth problem is it was only 2 months ago, less than, that these people were confirmed by the Senate. Both parties played a hand in confirming this clown car. There were a trove of concerns with all of these people. Aside from maybe Marco Rubio. Maybe Marco Rubio was the only person that was kind of competent enough to actually handle the job. Maybe. But everybody else, these concerns were noted before they were even confirmed. And yet, the Senate decided, what's the worst that could happen? This isn't even close to what's the worst that could happen. We're not even close to that yet. Next problem is they're not going to learn this lesson. Fools never learn their lesson. They will repeat this mistake. Assuming that they haven't already, we just haven't heard about it yet. They will repeat this mistake over and over and over again because they were using Signal as a means to avoid government oversight. Because what they're doing in a large part of their operations is outright anti-constitutional. And they just want to make sure they can cover their tracks while they're doing it. The next problem with what Signalgate represents is it shows the inability of the federal government now, of Congress, to actually govern responsibly because it's more collectively interested in the partisan politics of it and their re-election chances. The United States, our future, is being sold for the individual political careers of people that think that they're not going to have to bear the consequence of any of this. They may not immediately, but on a long enough timeline, mistakes like this come with violent consequences. I don't know if anybody out there watching this feels comforted by the fact that it's very likely that we are going to trigger a war with either Denmark or Panama or Iran or China. If this administration can't handle an operation what is effectively shooting fish in a barrel without just leaking info all over the place and exposing its information to Russian intelligence, mind you, because Trump's special envoy to Russia was at the Kremlin at the time of this happening, which means that his phone was almost certainly compromised. If they can't handle this operation, what's going to happen when the United States military runs into a crisis that it further struggles to get a handle on? We're just watching the fallout of what is just essentially a dozen people who don't give a shit about the consequences of their actions. Because they weren't selected for their competence, they were selected for their loyalty. They were selected because they would do what they thought that Trump would want them to do. But they don't care about the national security strategy. They don't have a coherent goal that aligns with military interests or even their own party's interests. It is ultimately what is in the interests of a fair few who are personally enriching themselves in the process of doing this. So whenever the United States gets itself into a real crisis, which it will, because this administration, just like Trump's first term, allowed small problems, potentially preventable problems, to fester and grow, because he would rather put his head in the sand and surround himself with the fake news that he always likes to lambast. He would rather surround himself with fake news to maintain the facade that he is an effective leader. It allowed for COVID, for example, to go from something that could have been contained. Not entirely. It was, at that point, it was far outside of even Trump's control. But his promise that somehow COVID was going to just magically disappear like an Easter miracle. A year later, over 1 million Americans were killed by it. 1 million. By a preventable disease. When this administration runs into the next real crisis, Signalgate is not going to even come close to how just utterly incompetent this administration is going to look. And as it makes its mistakes, it's going to compound those mistakes as it tries desperately to find some avenue of escape because it is completely allergic to taking responsibility over its own actions. This isn't politics as usual. This is a hostile takeover of our government by the most incompetent, corrupt, ignorant, foolish people that are unfit for the job. There's even a word for it. Title of the video.